Excellent. Katie, if you can take over letting people in, I'll try to do that as well.
I've got it. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, welcome, folks. Thanks, as always, for taking time. I see a lot of familiar faces here. This is, I believe, our 5th meeting of the Virginia Abandoned and Derelict Vessels Work Group. So we have been meeting since January of 2021. We've had several subcommittees that have branched off to work on various topics from laws, policies, funding, removal and disposal, and actually public education and outreach. So it's been a big body of work, had great input from all of you stakeholders. Again, welcome all the familiar faces here. If you all have a second to put your name and organization in the chat, that'd be great, because we'll be talking about some new members and composition of this group going forward. But we had started as part of and Katie will cover just in a second here, a small portion of our update to our Virginia marine debris reduction plan effort overall, and then aligning that with NOAA's Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Reduction Plan. So this is one of 4 buckets, abandoned derelict vessels, and trying to tackle this issue. We've had some great support from the William Ray Coastal Policy Center at the law school there to write a policy white paper, which has then been followed by a report from this working group to present some policy recommendations, best practices learned from other states, and include and document some of the stakeholder input we've gotten from marinas, from various state agencies, the Coast Guard, federal agencies, and then elements of tracking these vessels. So as you can probably see, if you had a chance to skim the agenda here, we're really just going to kind of go through some of these updates that we've been working on, and then kind of conclude with some next steps and how we want to push forward with some of these policy recommendations. I will say, and I'll be sharing the report right now, that there's been a lot of things going on, both Clean Virginia Waterways and my CZM program, and just trying to scramble things and some other deadlines. We also have a new administration, a new governor, new secretary, and new agency leadership for some of those applicable agencies working on ADV. So we've been trying to negotiate that and kind of navigate that process. So we're very, very, very close to getting this report published and out to the group. But the first step is really going to be when it's complete within the next week or so, to get that through the new agency leadership and the secretary to brief them on the effort that's done. As many of you recall, we have had input from agency heads at BMRC and DWR, but again, there's new leadership. Also DQ, which hosts my program, the Virginia Coastal Management Program. So that's just a kind of an update on those things. Katie, if you wanted to, I can stop sharing the agenda. If you want to share just kind of the PowerPoint briefly on kind of the composition of this larger effort, and then I'll get back to some. Yep.
So I'm Katie Register with Clean Virginia Waterways, one of the co-facilitators of this work group. And I just wanted to put the whole thing in context a little bit. I mean, Jeff did a little bit of that just a second ago, but basically a couple of people have wondered, why is Clean Virginia Waterways and why is the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program leading this work group? And it came from the efforts of the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. There's the cover of the plan, which was released just last year, but we had a previous plan that was published in 2014. And the plan was created by Coastal Zone Management Program and Longwood University. And it's got 4 major goals. One is consumer debris. This is the biggest goal because so much of the plastic and pollution in our ocean from solid waste comes from inland consumer goods. Derelict fishing gear is the second major goal. We're also have a lot of actions to reduce microplastics and microfibers in our waterways. And then the 4th major goal of the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan is to tackle abandoned and derelict vessels. And so the actions that are in this plan include coming up with some policies and education and outreach and prevention methods to tackle this type of marine debris. Underneath each goal, there are 5 strategies. All of the goals have these 5 strategies. And you see that this mirrors what we've been focusing on for the last year. Certainly we want to prevent abandoned and derelict vessels. We need to do more research and monitoring of the situation. We're working on proper disposal and infrastructure that will assist the vessel owners with being able to dispose of these things safely and economically. Obviously, removal is still important. And then, of course, policy management enforcement is part of the strategy in this plan. We also have 10 near-term actions identified as priorities by the very, very many stakeholders that created this plan. And one of the near-term actions is the work that this group is doing to come up with policy recommendations to deal with ADVs. So you can download the full plan from our publication page. I'll also put this in the chat box so you can have the link. And I do encourage you to take a look at it and how, again, it fits with everything that we're doing here. So at this point, I'll stop sharing and I guess send it back to Jeff to talk about new members. Yep. And a little bit more on the status of the report from our 2021 efforts.
Great, thanks, Katie. Yes, if anybody I think you have the power to unmute yourself. If anybody's, if this is their first meeting or it's been one in a long time, we welcome you. And just let us know if you'd like to be kind of included, or anybody who's kind of on the way out who would no longer like to be part of this group and get those email blasts. Just feel free to email Katie or myself. But if this is your first meeting, please introduce yourself quickly and your interest in ADV, just so the other folks know who's part of the discussion. Give me just a quick second there, or you can put it in the chat too, that's fine.
Good morning. This is Petty Officer Niles Merritt with the U.S. Coast Guard Marine Environmental Response. Petty Officer Leatherman couldn't make it this morning, and so I'm filling in for him.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, Ed Tillett here from Waterway Guide Media. I know I was in some of the early meetings, got busy with a bunch of things this past year, and have not been able to participate, but I'm jumping back in based on a lot of action I think that's going on in Virginia and elsewhere. And I would just like to say to the group, please consider us as a media resource for reports, for outreach, for any information that you think is important to the cause. We send about 3.5–4 million emails a year to voting constituents around the United States and worldwide, and we've always offered ourselves up for good, compelling information, research, background, anything that this organization has that it can support this effort across all of the different agenda items that were here. We stand by to support you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ed. And I know you were a guest speaker, I think, one of the earlier meetings talking about that whole apparatus. So we're really appreciative of your time and support.
Jeff, Rodrigo Belisario from Titan America. We are a cement manufacturer in Northern Virginia, in the Roanoke area. And our participation in this group is because we also use some waste streams as alternative fuels in our cement production process. So we have been discussing lately with Jeff and Katie and some other people about the potential of collecting some waste streams and use it as an alternative fuels, as a sound disposal way for wastes in our cement kilns in Roanoke, Virginia. We have another operation in Florida as well. So a lot happy to be here and a lot to come on that discussion.
Yes, thanks so much, Rodrigo. We've had some great calls with Titan America, and we're excited to kind of take the next step with them. So that's been an ongoing and very positive development. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, this is Mike Provost. I'm the Executive Director of the Vessel Disposal and Reuse Foundation. Just wanted to say hello and make sure that all the local Hampton Roads folks knew we're having a fundraiser to remove 4 sunk vessels this Saturday at Dockside Restaurant, and look forward to seeing you there.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And just so folks know, Mike has been just incredible in his participation and reaching out to us and just talking about all sorts of things. The challenges, really the boots on the ground. I used to have experience removing vessels in that Virginia Beach area. And then you'll, as you see in the agenda, we'll actually be sharing the video that he's created for us. So, and we'll also touch on Rodriguez's comments a little bit later on with Titan. So a lot of the things on a great agenda here. I guess I will proceed to share my screen again and just show you the latest rendition of that report that we're working on here. This should be a Google Drive document. We received comments from everyone from state agency leadership during meetings to emails to track changes from everyone from NOAA to, like I said, state agencies to all of our stakeholders, marinas, talking to Mike, just everyone. So those things we're glad that, you know, even though we thought we were at the 1 yard line, so to speak, that we left the door open for all those comments, because we've learned so much in the last just couple months since our last meeting that really we would have missed in the report. I mean, very pivotal things, you know, just again, boots on the ground, the constraints that from a broader policy perspective are not captured. So really trying to dig down to not just policy recommendations and where we get the funding, but who, you know, the actual protocols and the BMP's best practices for moving the vessels and sort of sticking points with that. That's another reason why this has been a little bit delayed in getting the final version out, because we're adding all this valuable information. I think we have Brendan Burke with the Department of Historic Resources too. He's been great to work with as well, kind of later in the game, because there's definitely an interest in you know, avoiding cultural and historic resource sites where some of these vessels are. And then some of the vessels, depending on their age, may very well be an interesting, have, you know, historical value. And that will kind of be covered a little bit when Karen Forget and Katie talk about our proposal, because we've got a lot of partners that have been stakeholders, both old and new, and letters of support were really great for getting that proposal up to NOAA. So this is just, again, to keep us on track here, you know, little things like finalizing executive summary, but taking some comments we got from people, rearranging titles, making the information more succinct. That was some feedback we got. Again, for folks who haven't seen this before, we're covering our stakeholder process, sort of how our meetings went, our interviews with other states, marinas, trying to make a table here that really summarizes things. This might go towards a one-pager that we might down the road hand to an elected official or staff. So it's really the big document, everything's involved, including appendices, and then we narrow it down and we get it more succinct going forward. Talking about, and I'm going to revisit this later in the meeting after we pivot back to the Coastal Policy Center's white paper, but we have our recommendations and breaking those into, based on the feedback we've gotten, things that are really feasible for year one of consulting with the General Assembly versus stuff that really is going to take years to hash out some of the issues, the sticking points, and then things just even other states we interviewed that's on their wish list. So if they already have an established program, you know, it's going to take some time overall to build out a program. So again, I will focus on some of these next steps down here and just kind of spark our discussion with how we want to go with this group going forward and who can do what. So I will stop sharing that right now. And Jesse, if you're on with VCPC, you're happy to, you know, welcome to share your screen. If not, just a quick update on where you all are at with that. Again, this is a very complimentary piece of the work group report.
Hey all, good morning. I'm Jesse Reiblich. I'm a law fellow at the Virginia Coastal Policy Center. And as Jeff mentioned, I've been working with our students on finalizing this white paper. And if you've been a member of the group, you've seen previous iterations of it. We are trying to finalize it in the next couple of weeks, but for anyone new to the group, essentially it goes through the existing Virginia ADV program. It looks to other states for lessons learned and policies that might work in Virginia as this becomes an issue that we try to tackle and that we try to get funding for and try to identify, you know, how to prioritize which vessels are removed and, you know, which ones, you know, should be immediately identified and removed with what funding there is available, ideas to increase funding. And then at the end, we do set out these recommendations. It is, as Jeff mentioned, kind of a complementary piece to the work that they're doing. I think we kind of have the whole, kitchen sink approach. These are all the things that Virginia could potentially do, but for political and other reasons, prioritization of other things in the near term, you might want to work on some of them or specific ones. And I think I saw Adrian Catula on the call. We've been working with people like her to kind of see how we can get these ideas in front of legislators. But this white paper will be kind of just, these are all the options, so the whole menu of options, and then you can pick and choose and say, like, this one sounds great, or this one working with this other one. But then we also do identify how other states have done it, ranging from Washington to Florida, and how those approaches have been successful, but also where they've kind of hit roadblocks or not been as successful as they thought they would be starting out, and kind of what loopholes that their programs allowed for the funding or other things to be used in ways they didn't intend. So yeah, we do intend, I think by the end of next week, we will hope to get this completely finalized. We will be posting this on our website. So I assume Jeff will be able to send this out after it's been posted. I think we might end up timing it so that we're done around the same time, it sounds like, Jeff.
Yeah. Yep. And you all received both documents. Well, I should back up a second. The white paper, whenever it's done and posted, that's fine. We can share it. That's basically a product of William Mary's Coastal Policy Center. Our report, once we have it, is something that we have to get. Just we'll send it through DQ's policy shop, and then to the new secretary and the new agency leadership at, I believe, EMRC, but I believe Director Brown's still at DWR. But those three sort of check boxes, just for full transparency, we need to kind of put it through the process again. So the timing might be, we will be sequential, but not simultaneous about that. All right. Well, thanks, Jesse, for that. And again, for all the work and taking over. Anthony Casado was the third-year law student who started this, but Jesse and Elizabeth Andrews have done an incredible job of stitching more things into it as we've come up with new ideas and working that in there. And really having, it's great to have some lawyers on the part of the group to cite some of these things in particular. The next thing is really, I see Karen Forget's on with Lynnhaven River now. Karen's been a great partner and has submitted a grant proposal to NOAA's Office of Response and Restoration Marine Debris Program that funds ADV and other marine debris removal projects. So Karen, if you wanted to give a quick overview on that and where we're at, really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. And I will be very quick because this is really aspirational at this point. We don't know yet whether we're going to receive this funding. We should get word from NOAA sometime in March. But LR Now, in partnership with the Coastal Zone Management and Clean Virginia Waterways, submitted a grant to NOAA's Marine Debris Removal Program to both remove some ADVs, as well as really do some research and learn more about the obstacles for boat owners and the alternatives. We had strong support from the City of Virginia Beach Public Works and the City of Virginia Beach Marine Police, as well as the City of Norfolk. And in the grant, we have identified ADVs in the Lynnhaven River in Virginia Beach, in the North Landing River in Virginia Beach, and in Willoughby Spit and the Willoughby Bay and the Elizabeth River in Norfolk. So all of those areas are part of the plan in the grant application. There are really kind of two parts to the grant. One is the removal of 6 ADVs That is a small part of the ones that we've identified, but it's a good starting place. And it will also really be an opportunity to learn from that experience, because we really need to better understand the obstacles to removal, what sorts of, who the best contractors are for the disposal process, what alternatives there are to the landfill on disposal. There's a lot to learn from the disposal process, not just getting these boats out of the water or off of the bottom, but really learning from that process. In putting the grant application together, we've already done a little bit of research into contractors who are available to do the disposal and what the different alternative disposal methods might be, and a little bit of work already in alternative uses for fiberglass particularly. So that's half of the grant. The second half is really kind of related to our work on the Education and Outreach Subcommittee. We realized pretty quickly in that process that there was a lot more that we needed to know about the obstacles to a responsible disposal for boat owners, with all different kinds of boats in all sorts of different settings, rural, suburban, urban. What are the obstacles to boat owners currently in disposing of boats properly and responsibly? And we really, so the second half of the grant is doing further research on disposal options, doing some research in the reuse of fiberglass in, whatever ways we can find other than landfilling it. And some focus groups with different boat owner communities to try to learn more from them on what will work and what won't work for them. And then a report that will go to our state agencies and our state leaders with some recommendations, we hope, from what we've learned in this process on regarding setting up a program in Virginia that would address this problem on an ongoing basis. And we've looked into, what some other states are doing, and that will also help inform that final report. So that's kind of an overview, quick overview of the grant. Keep your fingers crossed that we actually get funded by NOAA. And if we do, we'll be jumping into this work, beginning some of it this summer.
Thanks, Karen. That was a big lift for us. I think first of the year really came together, and we're really excited about that opportunity. And I should add to shout out to Boat US Foundation. They are going to be potentially a sub to Lynnhaven River now on some of the actual removal and having some contractors who are vetted for that. So just a great team effort.
Thank you for that. I should have mentioned them. They have so much experience in this area. They're a very valuable partner.
Awesome. Well, I will share another thing that's been taking up some of that ADV time, but I'm excited about this. This is something I want to thank Nick Mead, who is our GIS coordinator at CZM. Is everyone seeing this map here? GIS map in some state of Virginia. So I guess.
See the map, Jeff.
All right, great. Thanks, Neil. And I want to give a shout out to Neil Sturman, who's reported some vessels out in Smith Mountain Lake. So as you can see, the red here is the Coastal Zone Management Program's boundaries, which is essentially Tidewater, Virginia, and then out 3 miles in state territorial waters. You see a lot of these other vessels. You see a couple in Northern Virginia. A lot of them were concentrated in Hampton Roads, hence one of the reasons beyond just Karen's great credentials with her organization, but there are a lot just in that area, in their backyard. And really, so Neil's reported some out in Smith Mountain Lake. So this is a statewide effort. I probably should have said it at the beginning. We've talked to folks up in the Lake Anna region as well. And it's definitely a serious problem in Smith Mountain Lake, but as more boats that have been purchased during the COVID pandemic and other boats that are from the 70s and 80s with the fiberglass hulls that have been sort of aged out, we anticipate ADVs to be popping up everywhere. But this map here is basically a conglomeration of a spreadsheet we received from the Coast Guard back in February of last year. There was internal, none of these are publicly available, and actually one state, only Florida, has a publicly available option for showing ADVs and tracking them, allowing the public to track it. But basically, the green dots are the Coast Guard's ones since 2013. So some of them may have been resolved, but again, this is internal to basically prevent having to trigger a search and rescue mission if the vessel was already recorded, because that would be very costly every time to do that. We also had VMRC responded with the purple dots, so a little bit smaller portion. There was some overlap based on looking at aerials and actually seeing some of the vessels, where observations from maybe on the water and then from maybe the bank, the shoreline, and adjacent property, we think those might be redundant, but we can't really verify those yet because there's not a lot of registration numbers included for all these things. It definitely, the data is just a product of people scrubbing off potential identification numbers, that sort of thing, or a vessel that's in such dereliction, state of dereliction that it's just really impossible. So it ranges from everything from probably a very small portion are commercial vessels. Most of them, the vast majority, just based on description and make and model, from my limited knowledge of boating, are recreational. And then there's a couple of kayaks and john boats kind of sprinkled in there as well. So the total with all these layers, and I should note the final one, the Google Forms, folks like Neil were kind enough to fill out a Google Forms survey with some of these. So the orange ones, I would say, are probably the most recently reported. VMRC spreadsheet was dated as of, they delivered it to us in December of 2021, but we don't know how far back it goes. So again, we think there are more ADVs. It's a growing problem, but we don't know how many have been resolved since 2013 or earlier. So our best bet is that it's probably a net gain from the 176 that of all the dots right here. So that's just sort of an overview of what we're working on with that tool. That kind of segues into a conversation we had. NOAA was kind enough to make some time to have a discussion and talk about the IRMA database. That's the Environment Response Management Application. So it's housed with them, and they have worked with other states to everything from oil spill type of pollution to abandoned vessels and other sorts of marine debris. So we had a call with them in January, I believe, to just kind of hash out best practices for protecting individuals, identities of those vessels, as Florida does through their state database. Sort of having different layers, password protected, that sort of thing, between law enforcement and the general public. But we've sent off just our draft spreadsheet as is, with no tweaks, that is reflected by this map here, to their GIS staff, and they're going to be getting some comments back to us. But the hope is, going forward, where would this be housed? This would be at whatever state agency is eventually selected and funded per our proposals in the report, and that staff person would continue to coordinate with the Coast Guard, and any other state agencies, even private sector, the towing industry, to ground truth and report some of these vessels, and then every couple months bring up to NOAA, and then add that to their database once we have a firm footing on what we like here. So that's really it. Like I said, Katie's going to talk about Marina outreach real quick, and I'll leave this up here in case you have any questions.
Actually, I'm going to be sharing something.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, and as Jeff mentioned, in other states don't always show all of the ADVs on a publicly accessible website for privacy information or privacy reasons. But states like Florida have one level that they do show at the public, and those are mostly the navigational hazards, because they want boaters to know where these hazards are. So that's a decision that we envision will be made by the ADV advisory board once it is created, working with the staff who are staffing this new program. So I wanted to share with you this flyer, which you've actually seen at our last meeting. It was created by the staff at Coastal Zone Management Program. And our plan was to get this out in January to all marinas in Virginia so that they can post it, put it in their newsletter, share it on their website, put it on their bulletin board, to ask voters to help build this inventory while they're out. we were delayed. We learned that there's no one list of all marinas in Virginia. We got a terrific, huge list from Ed Tillett, who's on the call with us today. And we got another extensive list from the Virginia Department of Health, because any marina that has pump out facilities is regulated by the Department of Health. But that list came with no email addresses. And then we also got a list from the Clean Marina program, which is a project of the Virginia Institute of Marine Sciences. So what my intern has been doing is taking these three lists, putting them together, and then trying to find an email address for every single one of these marinas. So we'll be, that list is probably going to be done tomorrow. So we'll be getting this marina request out tomorrow, and we'll be attaching this as a PDF. But the marinas can also request a laminated version, which we will print and mail to them so they can put it on an outdoor bulletin board, something like that. So that's exciting. And we'll have this wonderful list of all marinas, which we were kind of surprised that it didn't already exist, but now it does. So I guess we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I'll just pause and ask if there are any questions specific to the things that we've just talked about. But I do want to point out we do have an open discussion and Q&A at the end of today's call. But I just thought I'd pause and see if anyone has any questions. Okay. Well, not hearing any. I guess I'll go ahead to our next agenda item, in which we're going to share the informational video with you that was produced. Let me minimize that. So we realized through the prevention and outreach subcommittee and through the talks with everybody else that we need to do some awareness, raising some awareness about the extent of the ADV issue in Virginia and the impacts that these abandoned boats can have on the environment and the economy, as well as navigational safety. So working with Mike Provost, who introduced himself earlier, this video was produced by Coastal Zone Management and Clean Virginia Waterways and created by Mike Provost's NGO. And I will start it at the beginning. If you can confirm, Jeff, that the sound still works.
From ocean beaches and bay shores to rivers and streams.
Yes.
We're not seeing the video, at least I'm not. I'm still seeing your browser with the marine debris reduction plan.
Thanks. Let me try that again. Of course, we tested this earlier and it worked great. You seeing it now?
Yes, looking good.
All right.
From ocean beaches and bay shores to rivers and mountain streams, Virginia is for boat lovers. Virginia's waterways are vital to the Commonwealth's economic engine. In 2020, 226,000 registered vessels called Virginia home, and consumer spending on powerboats, engines, trailers, and accessories topped $600 million. But the legacy of such a robust marine economy comes at a cost. Millions of fiberglass vessels constructed in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s have reached end-of-life status and are no longer wanted by their owners. Which begs the question, what does a vessel owner do with an old boat they can't sell and that no one wants? In Virginia, it's unlawful for a boat owner to allow a vessel to be in a state of abandonment and in danger of sinking, or in such disrepair as to constitute a hazard to navigation. Violators risk a Class 3 misdemeanor, $2,500 fine, and 12 months in jail. In spite of these penalties, Virginia's limited and expensive disposal options have pushed many boat owners towards illegal abandonment and dereliction. Since 2013, U.S. Coast Guard Sector Virginia has identified 170 abandoned and derelict vessels, known as ADVs, with countless others unreported. By Virginia law, the Marine Resources Commission has authority to remove ADVs from private and public property, leveraging the Marine Habitat and Waterways Improvement Fund. In practice, however, Virginia's ADV problem has surpassed the Commission's manpower and funding, resulting in an ever-expanding ADV backlog. ADVs litter the Commonwealth's coastal waterways, inland rivers, and lakes. The presence of fuel, oil, fluids, nets, and boat rigging endangers human and marine species alike. Illegal dump sites passed down from generation to generation, such as the North Landing River Boat Graveyard in Virginia Beach, provide a vivid representation of what can happen to sensitive habitats when convenient and affordable boat disposal options are not available. The current alternative to abandonment and dereliction in Virginia is the local landfill, where end-of-life vessels are crushed and buried at great expense to the owner, often thousands of dollars. Virginia needs other options, like those used in neighboring states to tackle their ADV dilemma, such as subsidized disposal of ADVs through voluntary turn-in programs, monitoring at-risk vessels, and physical removal of derelict vessels by state agencies or local governments. These options are just a few ways Virginia can create a solution to the problems caused by ADVs. In Rhode Island, a groundbreaking fiberglass vessel recycling project harvests materials from end-of-life vessels to use as an energy source in cement kilns. Establishing a similar program in Virginia could reduce the landfill space required for ADV disposal. It's clear, stopping the proliferation of ADVs on Virginia's waterways using both established and creative solutions will save taxpayers and the Commonwealth hundreds of thousands of dollars in ADV removal and disposal costs, while improving navigational safety for boaters and protecting the natural areas we all love. Healthy Virginia waterways are vital to a robust and sustainable local economy. Yet in Virginia, there is no easy and affordable way to safely dispose of unwanted vessel debris. In the years to come, ADVs will pollute Virginia's waterways at an ever-increasing pace if we don't work together to solve this problem. The time to act is now.
Actually, at the very end of that, when you see the logos, there should be a voiceover talking about this work group and the collaboration and how people can download the reports. So that will be added to the very final version before it's posted on YouTube. And to watch this in the future, a link to it will be put on our ADV Work Group webpage, which I'll share with you all again. That's the same page that we've been using to share agendas and notes and things like that. So any comments, either in the chat box or you can go off mic. We've got one nicely done from Jim Deppy. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts or comments?
Hey, Katie, Ed here. Is that a production of the work group or is that Mike's work?
We hired Mike to create this for us. So he was an independent contractor working on a script that was written by several members of this work group.
Yeah, good script, good salient point, Paul. So as soon as the link gets done, or if you ever need any production help like that, we do multimedia and voiceovers and all that stuff. But well done, subtitles, everything works. As soon as you get the link ready to go, let us know and we'll distribute that and make it available through our Waterway Guide media channels and our platforms.
Excellent. Thank you so
Yes.
much. And we think this is going to be a great resource also in the near future when we start talking to policymakers and legislators to give them an overview of the issue. So thank you for
Agreed.
your comment.
Agreed. And Mike, we did an article a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know, Mike, were you able to speak a moment ago? I saw you on the agenda. You had your hand raised. Have you had an opportunity to pipe up yet, or I had to leave the room just for a second?
Yes, sir. I introduced myself. I appreciate it.
Okay, good. We did an article, a feature article on the work of Mike last week, kind of at a global perspective, and that went out to our email blast list, Katie and team, and we're going to do another follow-up in another week or so as soon as I can get it on schedule. But that link, Mike has that link if you want to share it inside our portal, the Waterway Guide News and Events Repository. It's available for distribution. I encourage you to take a look at it. Mike maybe can post the link to it, or I can look at it and see if it will serve the purposes of this as well. It's kind of a global perspective, once again, of the work that he's doing and some of the success that's happened in other places, such as New York. You know, what Nate Grove is doing up there at Parks and Recreation. So in any event, again, we're standing by to assist any way we can.
Thank you. And once I get the link, it's okay if we put it on the
Oh, yeah.
ADV webpage. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, by all means. I'll tell you what, I'll try to go out and get it while I'm on this meeting and stick it in the chat room.
All right, great. And also, Clean Virginia Waterways does a monthly e-newsletter, and we share information about all kinds of different litter and marine debris. So we could share it on that newsletter. That's almost 4,000 people on our list. Great. Thank you. Any other comments, thoughts? Neil points out that the video did not include freshwater lakes, but I mean, it's mentioned, but the visuals were all coastal.
Yeah, Mike's based in Virginia Beach, and do you recall there was some like making a trip out there, but it seemed to be a lot. He was trying to reach out to the marinas there for some photos, but
yeah, I think the timing didn't work out.
Yeah.
You know, we've also mentioned that this may not be the only video. This one is the broad, big picture. In the future, we might want to do something more targeted. So we welcome your ideas.
Yeah, I was contacted by Mike to come out to Smith Mountain Lake, but I guess unfortunately didn't make the cut.
Hopefully in the future. And it was quite a shoestring budget that Mike really worked with us on this, so we appreciate that.
Please keep it in mind.
Yep. And definitely a regional focus as well, as things are different. I know sort of in the more rural areas, you know, as you can see with the North Landing River in Virginia Beach, that's for folks who aren't as familiar with the area, that's that boat graveyard is very much in a kind of sparsely populated area, draining to North Carolina away from the Chesapeake Bay versus the Lynn Haven, as you saw with the condos and the waterfront property and the restaurants and bars there. So definitely doing a profile on different areas, like maybe the Middle Peninsula, the Northern Neck, and how different practices, you know, have kind of differentiated themselves. We do know, just off of talking to folks, towers in the Potomac River in Northern Virginia region, that the simple distinction of having a lot of waterfront property owners up there that have just zero tolerance for any ADV, that they are towed out of there as soon as they are discovered, and that there is much of a focus on view sheds and a little bit more wealth up there, I think, in some areas on the river versus some areas that folks would maybe colloquially call backwaters that are less populated. So definitely there's some distinctions between regions for sure. And I think we definitely want to capture that in the freshwater lakes as well. That I got Ed's link right there in the chat. I actually put this in here a second ago. This is an article in the Virginian Pilot that features Mike and then references Katie and myself, and then Rachel Peabody with UMRC. The three of us were interviewed in addition to them talking to Mike. So that's something to check out. That was back in November. But as you can see, there's like a lot of stuff coming together that, there's the actual report, there's additional information coming in, there's the video, there's the inventory, there's interviews. So it's great to have folks really getting involved and getting the effort out, getting the word out. So that's just something we're really happy that's happened the last couple of weeks.
Hey, Jeff, just to let you know,
Sure.
that opinion pilot story is really what triggered us to run after and see what was going on with Mike. Our news editor found the story in Norfolk, called me, posted it in our newsletter, and Waterway Guy's been looking, as you know, for the last year and a half to get behind this effort in some way. We did some work with Georgia Department of Natural Resources on some issues down there and others. So as a national, international company, a media platform, we're always looking for cool stories. And here was a guy right in our own backyard, plus the work I had been doing and following with this group. So you're right. The more that gets posted, the more we move it around, the more, for lack of a better term, young reporters and others who are out there who control media time will jump on this story and see what's going on. We're seeing the motion right now. It's starting to create. New York Times did a big piece on the guy in New York. Soundings Publications covered that. So take these links. Everybody on this, we got 35 people on this, that you have all sorts of little media channels, emails and whatnot. Send these links out, they get distributed. And the next thing you know, you've got reporters and everybody else swarming around, and the legislators and those who make decisions about funding start seeing that there really is an issue here, and they start really starting to pay attention.
Great point.
I'm not telling anyone how to do it, but that's the groundswell support that we need.
Right.
Well,
And for additional context regarding kind of engaging the younger generation, so the Norfolk Academy, which is a private school here in Hampton Roads, one of their seniors actually did her senior speech. It's an 8-minute senior speech they give to their entire student body on the issue of abandoned and derelict vessels. So I was able to attend that. I'm in talks now with Norfolk Academy to set up a habitual relationship between Vessel Disposal and Reuse Foundation and Norfolk Academy to keep their student body engaged and keep spreading the word. I'll pause there and just close with, the print media, the news channel coverage, that's great. And I'm going to continue to pursue that. Another venue that I've been looking at is social media influencers. So I have about a dozen social media influencers now that are helping me spread that word, all volunteers, unpaid. So I think that's helping to kind of feed into the narrative and also populate the Google algorithm and the social media algorithm with the message.
Fabulous. Well, actually, that the next on the agenda is, and we do have an open discussion at the end of this meeting. But at this point, I think we should move on to an update from the Prevention and Public Education Subcommittee. And do we have Jessica on?
I'm here. Hello, hello. Glad I'm here. Sorry I was a little late. Got multiple meetings on all of the important issues. So wonderful video. I think that's going to go a long way for the public outreach and education. Just a brief update from us. We met in January. We kind of took a hiatus over the fall with waiting for the final report and the white paper so that we could be on the same page with what we're going to promote as outreach and education. We do have a few things that we've started working on, such as a table tent flyer style for what a responsible boat owner is, as well as a kind of, oh shoot.
Jessica, you've frozen up. Perhaps turn off your camera. And we've lost you. Jessica, you're frozen. I don't know if you can hear us. Let's move on to the next agenda item, and then we will come back to Jessica. Okay. So the next agenda item, and we will come back to Jessica once she rejoins the call.
Did y'all lose me?
We did. we're wondering if you perhaps turn off your video, that would give you more
No.
bandwidth for the
My
sound.
internet kicked out the whole thing.
Okay,
I'm
well,
not
you're back.
sure. Wait, what happened? Did any of what I said get through?
Yeah, you got up to the point where tent card on responsible boat ownership. You heard
Okay,
that.
so we did that. We also started a draft for an organizational chart for when we do have a program established to kind of guide folks through whether or not they qualify and other resources if they don't. So we're going to pick up in March on those efforts, along with determining some other outreach materials and getting this video out, I'm sure.
Right. Any questions for Jessica and the prevention subcommittee? Okay. Well, thank you, Jessica, for that update, and thank you for your committee's work. And at this point, the next thing on the agenda is talking about optional disposal options. And you've already heard a little bit today that a number of us have been in communication with Titan America, which is the only cement manufacturer in the state of Virginia. They're located in Roanoke. We've had 2 conversations with them so far, another one next week, to discuss all the logistics and all of the questions that have to be answered before we can do a pilot of sending a crushed or shredded fiberglass hull to them for analysis and use it as an alternative energy source. We've heard from a number of people at Titan that they are very, very committed to finding and using alternative energy sources. Making cement is very high in carbon footprint. So they're interested in exploring this with us. And so I guess that's just the short story. I don't know, Jeff, if you or Rodrigo would like to add anything more about our efforts so far.
I'll say that we're just going to have our 3rd meeting of this group, I believe Monday the 28th, and it's been expanded. It was pretty much initially some leadership, and then with Titan America first call in November, and then Rodrigo came in with some more technical expertise, and we kind of went through the process of the kilns and got into the chemistry and all that stuff. And really the next step is to meet with their Titan's environmental managers. So to kind of discuss air permits, their experience with DEQ and EPA on kind of to do a test run on say a truckload of a ADV fiberglass hull, put it in the kilns as is, see what adjustments need to be made. And then depending on how that works and blends with the other sources, are there any adjustments or investments in that infrastructure that need to be made? So we're working to try to get some samples to them and then talk over the permitting process. And I've invited Megan Keys, who I believe is on the call with DEQ's Tidewater Regional Office, who is working their pollution response program, but also we're going to try to reach out to DEQ air permitting folks as well. So kind of that's the next step of framing the issue and understanding the steps. So Rodrigo, anything to add, anything I missed?
Oh, very well said, Jeff and Kari, and thank you for pulling us into this initiative. Very good. And yeah, the cement kilns offer not only for fiberglass boats, for many different waste streams that can work as alternative fuels with the good care and good evaluation, can be a very, very good solution for different waste streams. So we are looking forward for our meeting next week and see what are the next steps in the direction.
Thank you. And there's a lot of logistic beyond the questions that Rodriguez just brought up, you know, like the chemical composition and how well it burns. There's lots of logistic issues given that most of these fiberglass hulls are coastal and Titan is Roanoke. But a lot of these questions hopefully will be answered if Flynn Haven River now is successful with their grant from NOAA, because we built into that proposal, you know, further exploration of this. I wanted to point out too that many of you remember Evan Ridley from the Rhode Island Marine Trade Association. He's met with us to discuss their pilot program on using fiberglass as an alternative energy source. He has left the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association, and we are hopeful that another one of their staff will be being able to enlighten us on what they've learned through their pilot program. So hopefully next time we meet, we'll have an update on all of this very exciting prospect.
And in the chat, thanks, Neil. That's great. The proximity, I know, as Katie said, with most of the coastal vessels, I think presents a longer term challenge with transportation, but Smith Mountain Lake and Roanoke are a lot closer. So if that's where we get a sample, you know, we definitely want to hop on that. So thanks for bringing that up, Neil. I guess.
Sure. If Rodrigo wants to contact me, we can, you know, maybe work something out where we can remove a vessel and, you know, send it to Titan to see what he can do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also need to find a commercial shredder that hopefully we can work with rather than trying to purchase that equipment.
Yeah, it's not only the chemistry, it's also how we feed it into our system, and we have some infrastructure already, and we need to find a way to make that vessel in a physical way, shredded in a particle size that can be transported by our system as it is right now without further investment. And of course, before all that, we need to sort out the permits and the environmental compliance and legal compliance to make it happen also. But definitely having something close to the plant will make it a lot easier. Definitely. Thank you for that.
Thank you,
Hey,
Rodrigo.
Katie, I can provide you the specific make and model of a commercial grade shredder that can produce the 2-inch minus fiberglass recyclate that Titan would need. Key point is that you don't have to buy one of those shredders. They can process an incredible amount of material in a given hour. So all you'd have to do is rent a shredder for a half a day, essentially get all the vessels, break them down, have the fiberglass set aside, and 2x4 foot sheets or however you can break it down. Make a big pile, rent the shredder, bring the shredder on site. It comes there for a day and processes 50 tons, and then it goes away. So the cost is not as insurmountable as it may sound.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was saying, is that we need to find those commercial shredders, not buy our own. And we did hear from Titan that the size, I mean, we still have to have this discussion, but they said flour, the consistency of flour is very desirable, I guess large surface. So yeah, these are all those technical questions that we need to explore. But that's good to know that you know of a place that does do that rental. All right. I think at this point, let's go on to our next agenda item, which is membership. Jeff, you already covered this during your introduction, but anything more you want to say about the membership of this work group?
Yeah, I guess circling back, it's probably of all the folks that, we have, everyone can kind of check in the chat. I've rattled off a couple of organizations. We've had pretty consistent participation by every sort of sector, state, federal, local government, PDCs, NGOs, industry. So we're really pleased with how everyone's been consistently participating and giving their valuable time and weighing in. But is there something, again, that it's not for the report for getting more feedback, but sort of how we get our message out? And I know that folks have generously volunteered, using their social media outlets and their work, but is there something we're missing in terms of, this video, more emphasis on social media companies, or is it sort of, we got our stakeholders and then our stakeholders, we let them run with the message once it's all kind of final and we've reached a consensus? I think that's the model we kind of have, but are there any groups that you think that this group thinks is missing in that process, especially with the outreach phase?
I'm going to jump in again, Jeff. There are some, I'll start my video real quick. There are some national voting organizations that once the reports and once we kind of get the plan together, we should probably include, and I'll throw out some acronyms and explain them, or I can also put them in chat, but there are some fairly substantial voting groups. There's America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. These are all boat owners, and they're out there doing the big loop. They're seeing the problem nationwide as they take their boats places. They are influencers. They're successful. They've worked hard all of their lives to be able to afford a very large vessel and go places. There is, that's known as AGLCA. There is the Seven Seas Cruising Association, international boaters and boaters who cruise up and down the coast and go here, there, and everywhere. Once again, boaters who are on the water. There is the Marine Trawler Owners Association, MTOA. There is U.S. Sailing. All of those organizations comprise people who have a stake in the beauty and navigation of America's waterways, in addition to whatever states they're in. So I'll compile that list, get it to you. We can start feeding information from our success and the work that we've done to those organizations, and they become stakeholders, influencers, perhaps even funding resources.
Great, thanks so much. And that's yeah, for the next steps. We did give a presentation at SOBA back in, I want to say, October, with, I guess that's Safety Operational Boating Association. I'm going to always get that wrong, but we gave a little presentation there. So that was one step as sort of a larger organization. We had a question about commercial fishermen and watermen, and I want to say sort of a disclaimer is that we've made a point to emphasize in the report that commercial vessels are not really the target of the initial cleanup effort, because they are much fewer in nature, and in terms of a budget down the road, we've heard from other states that, you know, in North Carolina, for example, they got $1 million to respond to vessels being displaced by Hurricane Florence, I believe, or no, Hurricane, gosh, I'm blanking on the recent one, 2018 or so. Michael, yeah, and they went after a shrimp trawler in a marsh, and they found that, like, I think 100 grand, 10% of their budget was already spent on one vessel. So for that reason, not saying that they're not any less of a threat to the environment or navigation, but in terms of prioritizing larger groups of vessels that are smaller is one avenue. Again, the smaller number overall are commercial. And then finally, we do not, and this is reflected on our registration or potential fee that is complementary to other fees that are administered for boats. We don't want to raise that right now, given other things going on with registration fees going up potentially. And we don't want to hurt the little guy in terms of someone who is a commercial, someone who's working the water, oystering, fishing, that sort of thing. That's not the target we're trying to go after. And we definitely need more work in terms of the sort of impact on working waterfronts in the more rural areas in the coastal zone, where my program has worked with several PDCs, Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, Eastern Shore. But the message is that we are not trying to target these folks who are getting by in very small profit margins and work in the water.
And we have mentioned in the report that we acknowledge that commercial vessels are an ADV issue. And there's basically a shopping list of things that we're hoping the new ADV advisory board will have to discuss and come up with policies, and commercial certainly is going to be a big part of their to-do list. And I just see that, Jim, you did list enlisting commercial fishermen as part of the outreach to identify ADVs. Absolutely, yes. We definitely want to get recreational and commercial, everyone who's on the water, know that we're looking for their input on the inventory. Yes, we will reach out to them for that. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thanks, Rachel and Jim. And I will say, if I didn't say it earlier in the inventory process, and it's worth reiterating, this is an internal database. I've obviously shared my screen. We're still working through, again, how we want to house that and provide it to the public, what form, while respecting, property rights for vessels that the original owner might very well reclaim. We've only shared it with the Department of Historic Resources, who is doing routine field work in the underwater archaeology realm and looking at shorelines, and then with Boat US Foundation, our point of contact, who is also deeply invested in that Lynn River Now grant. So very trusted resource there. So distributing it to their towers if they happen to be on the job, spotting a vessel while they're towing another one, getting kind of 2-for-1 on inventory, ground truthing. So, but that's it. So that's a great idea to reach out to those additional constituents. And thanks, Karen, to marina owners and operators. Yep, we did have someone from America's Great Loop Cruisers Association early on.
Right. I don't
but
think
that's-
she's joined us for a while.
Yeah. But yeah, this is great.
And I see, Mike, you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to jump onto what Ed said about potential funding and outreach sources. And so based on my experience, I think this is important for the group to understand. Based on my experience, the people that are creating ADVs are the most at risk in our populations. It's the elderly, the indigent, the physically handicapped, and the mentally ill. Now that's outside of a major hurricane or a natural disaster that creates a large swath of ADVs, but those are the people that I'm engaging with. So there may be some social services type pots of money, especially for elderly people or mentally ill, that we could tap into to help remove and offset the cost. I'm not familiar with where we would look for that money and outreach, but that's a really unique, or maybe not unique, a really pervasive theme that I've identified. It's those 4 categories of people. And that's been reinforced by the fact there's been 2 ADVs in Virginia Beach recently that they popped up. I started to kind of engage with the owners, and the owners had the means, they had the physical and mental wherewithal and financial to take care of it. And they did. They hired a company and took care of it. So it's the folks that are the most at risk amongst us that are kind of at the root of some of the problems.
Interesting. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I guess I definitely want to defer as much time for comments like that and just the open discussion, because that is really the best part of these things. It's always a service to provide some updates and share resources, but hearing from the audience is the best part. That's why these meetings are held. So I really think we want to save as much time for that. I think we're still ahead of schedule. Katie, I guess if you wanted to just do the quick priorities, and I can pull up the next steps, and then that kind of pair that.
So those of you who may remember from seeing this earlier draft, of the 2021 ADV Work Group report, it ends with next steps, which Jeff is about to share. And these were things that all of you contributed to creating. And can you make that any bigger, Jeff?
Let's see, 100%. Let's bring it.
Okay.
Better?
Yep, thanks. So I'll just go through the key points and then get your feedback on whether you still think these are the next steps. We certainly want to continue to refine the proposals that are in the plan and talk and get input from the state government entities. And as Jeff pointed out, we have a new governor, a new administration, many new agency heads. So we need to get input from VMRC and DWRs very specifically, but then other entities like DEQ's policy director, the health or the historic resource sources get their input as well. And ultimately, we're hoping to get input from the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, which can assist with the actual creation of policy language. We never thought this work group, nor the work being done from William and Mary, would result in actual legislative language. For that, we would depend on input from the legislative branch, but with very, very clear policy input from this work group. So some of the things that we hope to accomplish in 2022 is to work on the inventory, which we've already heard, and share that information with all the relevant state and federal agencies and local as well. We want to, under C, I'm going fast here, I know, but C is obtain additional information about landfills and refine the range of vessel removal costs. Now, this is interesting. In our earlier research of the last year, we got a lot of estimates of what it costs per foot to remove a vessel, remove and dispose of a vessel. But when we were working with Lynnhaven River Now on their proposal to remove 6 ADVs as part of their grant proposal to NOAA, we found that the estimates we had were off tremendously. We were getting numbers in the $30,000 per vessel. Now, some of these vessels are sunk, and of course, we all know that that's going to cost much more than a boat that's still floating. Some of the vessels have been sunk for a very long time, meaning that they're probably full of a lot of sand and stuff. So at any rate, we want to take a harder look at the vessel removal costs, which will help us with future budget requests as well. We want to brief the incoming administration, which is now the administration, on our AVD efforts and talk about getting something in the governor's legislative package to deal with ADVs. We've heard from many of you that that is the most successful method to get funding from the General Assembly, is have it part of the governor's legislative package. So that those conversations need to be started no later than this summer for the January 2023 session. Resources, we've already talked, we showed you the video. We're working on fact sheets that summarize the issue so that people who don't want to read our 20-page report can read a 2-page summary. And hopefully these will all be useful to the media and to legislators and their staff. Item F there is to develop and launch a public outreach campaign. Again, using the fact sheet, using the videos to provide support and pressure amongst the public to deal with this issue. And then the last thing on our to-do list is to request draft legislation to be developed based on the recommendation and policies in this report. We're thinking that if that is requested by fall, we probably need no later than September so that it can be introduced. So I'll pause there. These again were the priorities that were discussed by this work group and some of its subcommittees as things that we hope to accomplish. And I know it's awkward because you don't have the latest draft in front of you, which you hopefully will have soon. So I'll open this up for comment and see if there's any other thoughts about these priorities for 2022. Jim, if you can come off mute and talk about your idea with the Virginia Conservation Network.
Well, one of the first steps is typically when we're trying to plant a seed, at least for a long game, to begin the conversation with legislators is to write a white paper and have it, which is a 2-pager, and it lays out the background and the critical issue, and then proposes legislative actions. And that's included, would be a white paper to be included in Virginia Conservation Network's Our Common Agenda booklet that comes out every year. And it's been published for years and years, and every legislator pays a lot of attention to it. So this could be, this could be a candidate for a white paper for the 2023 edition, and usually the actual hard writing on those white papers starts in around June. So that might be good timing for the 2023 edition if we think we're ready to go.
That's a great comment, Jim. I have a copy of the Our Common Agenda booklet that Jim was just referring to, and I think that's a great idea. I know, is Karen Forget still on the call?
I am.
Yeah. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on Jim's idea to perhaps include in the common agenda a 2-pager on ADVs.
Well, I think it would be very useful in promoting this program. And Jim laid out the process well. Each of the white papers originates with one of the work groups. So this would originate in the water work group. And Jim and I both serve on that work group. So we can bring that up when in the spring, when the group meets to really look at what are the top issues for next year's common agenda. We can include it. And then we would, over the next couple of months, we would put together the draft white paper. And then that gets vetted with the whole work group. And then everything that goes into the common agenda is voted on by the VCN board. And the book comes out in August, usually, so that it's available for legislators as they're thinking about what they're going to put into, what bills they're going to promote or champion in the next session. So, and the big advantage is that you get an audience from across the whole state. There are 150 plus environmental organizations that are part of the Virginia Conservation Network. So by putting it forward in that forum, you get the buy-in and the help of groups all over the state.
Excellent. I think that's a great idea. And many of us on this call, or some of us on this call, are members of the network. And I am, and I'm happy to contribute to that effort. So thank you for that.
Good.
Great idea.
Yeah, we'll definitely, Jim and I can put it forward this spring when the water work group meets to choose their top issues for next year.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on the 2022 near-term priorities for this work group? And of course, each subcommittee that will be meeting will also have their own short-term agenda.
Hey, Katie, Mike Provost. So just in response to the cost of ADV removal and disposal, when folks are engaging with the marine salvage contractors, I would encourage everyone to think about economies of scale. And what I mean by that is, during my negotiations, it was $10,000 to bring a barge in to remove one vessel, plus the fees for the crane operators, et cetera. So that $10,000 is all that transportation to get the barge on site. So I was able to do some economies of scale with the salvage contractor and do 4 vessels for $35,000. So by just keeping them on site and knocking out more than just that one vessel, we can save a lot of money. If you look at like the North Landing River Boat Graveyard with the 15 vessels that are visible above the surface, that should be one package deal. And maybe instead of piecemealing it 1 or 2 at a time, you just go, hey, marine salvage contractor, I want you to go down there and do all 15 in one swath. So that's just some added context that I've kind of learned, facts on the ground.
Great, thank you. And I think actually the Lynn Haven River Now proposal uses that exact term, and we hope multiple will be released, but that's a really good point. Other thoughts, comments on near term?
Adrienne, I don't know if this has been mentioned because I apologize, I had to step away for a few minutes. The House budget that was recently released actually has $3 million in it for abandoned derelict vessels. So in terms of short-term actions, if there are folks on this call that would like to support that money moving forward in the conference proposal from the Senate and the House, I would go ahead and reach out to the House and Senate members on the money committees to request that money stay in the budget moving forward.
Could you share with us the House or Senate bill?
Sure, it's an amendment in the House budget. I can send the link to folks. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Great, wonderful.
Adrienne, I have a quick question on that. I haven't looked at all the budget amendments yet. I hadn't seen that, but are those funds allocated to VMRC?
Yeah, it's in VMRC's budget.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, things are
All right.
moving quite fast. So thanks for the update. I'm sure we'll be in touch with VMRC about that. But thank you.
And I guess we have a few minutes now for open discussion, and then we'll talk about next meetings. So anything else on people's minds about ADVs before we wrap up today? Okay. We'll definitely all be looking at that link that you just shared with us. Well, anybody else, any open conversation about ADVs? If not, we'll just talk real briefly about our upcoming meetings. Actually, Jeff, that's your agenda item.
Yep. I'm going to stop sharing this, and just for folks that everyone's reading right now in their web browser, but provides $3 million from the general fund to fund the first year to support the removal of derelict boats from Virginia waterways. So as we know, that goes to VMRC because they currently are the only agency that has jurisdiction to touch a vessel, put ropes on it, and physically remove it. So this will give them money to carry out their mission. Again, more details, I'm sure, in subsequent conversations, but this is big news. This is new. But in terms of how our group wants to work, and again, how things may change based on this funding, we were thinking about, and to back up one quick step, when we'd had the law and policy, we had the funding, we had removal and disposal, and we had the prevention and public education, 4 subcommittees. And they met almost monthly. And as we got towards the first draft of policy recommendations, which were shared in September with this overall group, it started out with a joint committee of law, funding, and then removal. And prevention and public outreach intentionally sort of, as Jessica mentioned, we sort of was delayed to basically process those final recommendations as they became finalized, and then take that into a more digestible message to the general public. So that's still sort of the format. But as we were working on this final report and getting into many other side tasks that you all heard about today, we would like to see if those folks are still interested in resuming, maybe not on a monthly basis, but still meeting those same sort of buckets of law and policy, of funding, removal, disposal, and then we would just regardless like to take the prevention and public education committee, because Jessica's very interested in continuing that. So it's really the first 3. Do we bring them back, or do we just rely on one subcommittee to kind of do the outreach, and then we just rely on the overall work group to kind of advance some of these things, and then as we go, kind of fade that out as we sort of take things to the General Assembly, at which point Katie and I cannot be lobbying as state university and agency employees. But that's sort of, I wanted to put that out there for the group. And on the agenda here, we've said law and policy would probably be late March, early April would be the next thing, just thinking out loud, and then removal, disposal, a similar time frame. And then we'd probably keep quarterly meetings for this overall work group. So that would put us in May sometime. So just want to put that out there because we have the large group here, and many of whom are participants on those subcommittees. So open up to anyone.
Hey, Jeff, Scott Titus with the Corps of Engineers in Norfolk.
Yes, Scott.
A lot of great information here. Exciting to see so much progress. I was away from the group for a little bit as I worked on a couple of different projects, but glad to be back. I'd like to engage with the outreach subcommittee and possibly leverage the Corps of Engineers public affairs outreach capabilities. I think we have a good slice of the pie with folks that see our outreach. And as we go forward, the Corps of Engineers has a hazard navigation hotline that's pretty well published, and we get a lot of calls about abandoned vessels and other hazardous navigation. So just working with the team to figure out what the communication path is going to be as we pass information. Once we figure out from kind of that NOAA flow chart who owns the responsibility for the particular bottom. So looking forward to working with the team as we go forward. But if someone can put me in touch with someone from the outreach subcommittee, we'll engage with our PAO.
Absolutely, will do. Yeah, I can, Jessica, if you're still here, you can send Scott your email. If not, I can kind of introduce you all.
Oh, sorry. Would you like me to throw it in the chat or?
Sure.
I don't know if I can.
Does that work for you, Scott? Just to kind of scoop up your email real quick, and y'all can.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jessica, and I'll reach out to you offline.
Yeah, perfect. Just shoot me, kind of a review of what you said here, and then any other questions, comments, and we'll talk offline.
Awesome. Yep. And I think it's important for folks to note that the way Katie and I were thinking of this is that even if we had this, splash of potential good news with this General Assembly funding, or we do get that pilot project, hopefully from NOAA funded, it's really an all the above approach. We want to continue to move forward on this on all fronts. So that's really why we want to sustain this effort, and really the backbone of all of this, beyond our enthusiasm and just professional interest in it, is that this is part of our those 4 buckets of that Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan that Katie presented on at the beginning of this meeting. We have a 5-year plan. We had one from 2014 that was then updated. So this is a part of a requirement for that plan to go forward. So even if we had every vessel removed tomorrow, we still would be obligated through that plan to continue to work and plan and chip away at other issues or pivot to ones that are new. So we don't think that this is going to go away within 5 years, but we certainly want to have a plan each year. And I think that this work group in various forms will be around for that long, regardless how many vessels we remove, next year, next month, that type of thing.
I'd like to ask, when did you say we would know about the NOAA grant? Whether we approved for it or not?
Sometime in March. I don't think they gave us a date.
Yeah.
And you'll know with final approval in March?
Yeah, it was a full proposal that was submitted in January, and we'll know in March if it was accepted. Sometimes NOAA accepts, but they give you less than you requested. So, but anyway, too soon to say.
Okay, thank you. Great.
And Neil, that would start October 1st of 2022, if awarded. So,
okay.
And we've been urged to not try to do anything before that's within the scope of work. But we have, as part of the proposal, as many of you all know, you have to do your homework on kind of the process and meet with the contractors. So as part of us writing that proposal, we have done a lot of legwork to kind of set ourselves up. So Karen, anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it. We're hopeful that we get the funds, but we don't know yet. So hopefully we'll know something within a month.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, it's 11:01. Are there any final thoughts anybody would like to share? Or if you want, you can put it in chat box. We do save the chat and look at it after the meeting. If not, we'll be doing a doodle poll to have our next meeting, which we anticipate will be in May. It will be sooner if something more urgent comes up, but we encourage you to continue to be active in the subcommittee meetings, which will be held in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And again, any last comments so we can end somewhat on time? All right. Well, thank you all so very much. We appreciate you being with us today. And as soon as we have the report that we can share with you after we get input from the state agent leaders, we will definitely let you know. But thank you all, and I'm going to end the recording at this point.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Neil.